is going on, guys? Welcome back to another book review. I am Cam Williamson, and today we are taking on former First Lady Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry, Overcoming in Uncertain Times. This is her second book. I did not read the first one. I heard good things about this one. I heard that Michelle Obama gives some good insights into what it was like being around the White House, the time of obviously Barack Obama's presidency, and leaving. I was trying to hopefully gain some reassurance and some, things weren't nearly as bad as they seemed to be at the time, and, to get some honesty. So that was kind of why I bought this book, not for any political reason, whether you agree with everything or anything that President Obama did or President Trump did or anything that Biden has done. That's not why I bought this book. I bought it because she is a very influential lady. She's the first black first lady of our country's history. There's a lot I thought that could be learned from former First Lady Michelle Obama. Let me read the back and then we'll get into the review. I've learned it's okay to recognize that self-worth comes wrapped in vulnerability and that what we share as humans on this earth is the impulse to strive for better, always and no matter what. We become bolder in brightness. If you know your light, you know yourself. You know your own story in an honest way. In my experience, this type of self-knowledge builds confidence, which in turn breeds calmness and an ability to maintain perspective, which leads finally to being able to connect meaningfully with others, and this to me is the bedrock of all things. One light feeds another, one strong family lends strength to more, one engaged community can ignite those around it. This is the power of the light we carry. Michelle Obama. Okay. So, let's get into the just straight up review of the book. The book was kind of difficult to get into. She set a tone early on and she stuck with the tone throughout the book, which is I'm going to tell a story about a member of my family or my past, and then I'm going to take the lesson or, chunk from that story and tell you why I apply it to my life today. A lot of different, small stories, and the reason I think you're hearing some hesitancy from me is because none of the stories that Michelle Obama told in this book were very impactful or meant anything. Like, the very first story she starts off with is talking about her dad having MS and having to walk with a cane, the vulnerability of seeing her dad degenerate like that, the fear and anxiety that it caused, wondering if their security, their well-being was going to be protected. And, Michelle Obama kind of talks a little bit about having to start to fend for herself and make a life for herself. There was so many points in the book where I think Michelle Obama was just clearly trying to relate to the younger female African-American community, because she just kept bringing up points of how she felt not one with everyone else around her. She didn't feel like she was a part of the group. She felt like what she kept calling an only, which is like she was the only black woman to be in the law division of Princeton at the time she was there, and she was always one of only. So I can appreciate the fact that I can't relate to those struggles. Obviously, they were peppered into almost every single scenario that she brought up, which is fun. She's talking from her own observation, but it made it a little difficult to relate to. Obviously, I'm not a female and I'm not African American, so I can't relate to that, but it helps gain some empathy, right? Because there was a point towards the middle of the book where she talked about how the press and the news media constantly stereotyped her as an angry black woman, because we're not. She's not lying when she says if African American women show anything other than a smile and agreeability, they're like, "Oh, she's good. She got an attitude. What's wrong with that ghetto? Whatever." And Michelle Obama even says that it's like being called ghetto, just because she doesn't always look like she looks on the front of the book, where she's smiling, has a huge smile on her face. I doubt I could flip to it quick enough, but there was the part in the book when it's a New York Times article where they have this big scowling picture of Michelle Obama, and it was the the furious first lady or something like that. And I mean, I can definitely relate to people talking badly about those that are in the public eye. The thing that I didn't care much for about the book was a lot of it was like woe is me type stuff, a lot of victim feeling coming off, which is not what you expected when the book is called The Light We Carry. You didn't expect to feel. Again, I think this book was meant to empower young women, especially young women of color. And I just try to put myself in those shoes and go, would I have felt empowered by this? And a lot of it was no. Like, I think there was a lot of unnecessary jabs at former President Donald Trump. This book was released just this year. So for it to talk and put things in such factual terms of like the former president encouraging the January 6th thing where they like ran up into Senate and all that. I think there were so many questions about that day and about what happened and, why people were there and how they felt they were justified in being there. I think for the former First Lady to stand there and just straight up put in her book, this was encouraged by solely this person, was a little irresponsible, because I think there is going to be a criminal hearing, and I think former President Trump may be involved in that over those circumstances. So I feel like that, and her mentioning that she didn't want to go to the inauguration of Trump, but she, as the First Lady, decided she was going to go high. That's the last part of the book. The last chapter is going high. And if you remember, she talks about it in the book. Their campaign slogan, her motto was kind of, when they go low, we go high, around the time of Clinton and Trump's election. Again, I think she was very passive aggressive about criticizing Trump and did nothing to criticize anything in her own party that could have been flawed at that time, which made the book biased to me. As someone who has no political leaning one way or the other, I don't want to feel your political bias in a book that's not supposed to be about the politics of the country. Sure, she's the former First Lady, but she's not writing the book as the current First Lady talking about current affairs in the world. She even talked about Laura Bush and how she tried to adhere to Laura Bush's schedule when she first entered the White House. She had her mother come to the White House with her to help manage the transition with the kids and the butlers and the workers of the White House. All tend to fondly take to her mother. Again, it didn't do much in the way of anything, except she just talked about how her mother never wanted to be in that role, but she did it, and she stayed the whole 8 years. She was kind to all the housekeepers of the White House, and they all loved her. Again, there was just so many times when you're reading stories about people, and you're like, what does this have to do with me? There's a couple of stories. There was a story about her, her personal assistant. And she tells a story about how after a while of hanging out together in a non-professional way, she asked Michelle Obama to have like a professional meeting where she could present something to her, some knowledge that she had been withholding. And it was the fact that her dad went to jail for 25 years. But had nothing to do with anything. And it just felt like Michelle Obama kept grabbing at these things to be like, incarceration in the black community. I know how to empathize with that because my secretary had a father that was in prison, even though he's been there for 25 years. She's a grown adult now. He went in when she was like 3, has nothing to do with anything. And she's kind of just telling other people's vulnerabilities. She's not telling her own. And I think that's what bothered me a little bit. She talks about feeling anxiety when she walks up to a podium and like the right teleprompter was out or something. But that doesn't make you vulnerable and relatable. And one thing that I found a little disturbing as a man was the chapter about her and Barack Obama partnering well, how they came to be. Obama ended up being like a summer associate at the law firm she worked at, and he was pretty forward that he knew he had some attraction to her, asked her out. She felt weird about even maybe dating him because it could be seen as like a workplace romance. He assured her it wasn't. And they started dating, where he initially took her to Hawaii to meet his family. And she writes more about falling in love with Hawaii and the scenery of Hawaii and his family and how he is with his family, which, sure, how your spouse acts around their family is definitely going to weigh in the judgment of you loving them. But she just didn't really make it seem like she loved Barack Obama from the start. She liked the idea of going to Hawaii. She talked about how she had always wanted to go to Hawaii but never saw it as a thing. But then when they finally went there, it was magical. They would sit on the sandy beach, and watch sunsets or whatever, and then take this blanket back to the house. And she wrote about these special moments, but it was all the specialness of Hawaii. So I just don't know what Michelle Obama was seeking to accomplish with this book. It was all mixed and jangled and personal life vulnerability and then like little political jabs thrown in there, and it was just all over the place. It took me a couple days to read just because I didn't quite know if I was going to want to finish it through, but I did. If we're going on a 5-scale rating, I'll give this one a 2.5 out of 5. It wasn't an easy read. It didn't make a lot of sense. Overcoming in uncertain times, I don't think you really feel like you have tools to overcome in uncertain times. After reading this book, a lot of it is based around the anxieties of when the coronavirus pandemic started. And I mean, I guess if you learn to knit during that time, you might be able to relate to some of her coping mechanisms. But outside of that, I just don't know. So unfortunately, I wanted to like this book. I just genuinely didn't. And that's, again, no political stuff being involved in that. It was the fact that politics were brought into this book at all that was kind of one of the off-putting things to me. I thought this was going to be a book for unity and how can we all come together and how can we all move forward, and that's just not what we got from this book. If you read it, let me know what you think. See you guys in the next review.